Hello, welcome to the Connecting with Our Community webinar led by Studio Designer CEO Keith Granet. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our guest is Meg Touborg, founder of Metworks Inc. We invite you to submit written questions anytime during the session. After Keith and Meg finish their conversation, we will begin our audience Q&A. If you go to the GoToWebinar control panel box under questions, you will see a dialog box to type in as seen in this screenshot. We will try to get to as many questions as possible. And now here is Studio Designer CEO Keith Granet.
Welcome everybody. We're thrilled to have you with us again for another webinar. Today I'm actually really happy to share with you Meg Touborg, who is my partner in the Leaders of Design. Meg comes to us with a tremendous amount of experience as a brand builder and marketer, first starting out in the fashion accessory world with companies like Coach and Kate Spade, and then later on was the CEO of Rose Tarlow, and also the executive vice president of Waterworks before they became a restoration hardware company. Meg, welcome, and I'm glad to have you with us.
Great, thanks, Keith. This is fun already.
It is. We have a great audience, and they're just dying to hear more information, certainly about marketing. Before we start, Meg, I think you're getting feedback from your computer. I wonder what that's about.
I don't hear it. I'm speaking again now. Do you hear it? Do you hear it now?
Yeah, I guess when I speak, there's feedback, but when you speak, it's fine. It's just sort of like a delay. Maybe while I'm talking, if you mute and then.
Oh, okay.
And then, so let's just, my first question is obviously, how are you and what has this all been like?
Well, I guess the first place we all start is with health. I'm doing well. My family, my extended family, my older parents, we've been incredibly fortunate that my immediate sort of intimate group of friends and family have all been spared being immediately, having our health compromised. So I guess from there, though, there are two worlds we all operate in, right? Our personal lives and our professional lives, and they're just they're really blended now in ways that we couldn't even have imagined 8 or 10 weeks ago. Professionally, I'm terrific, and I guess that's really what we're going to talk about today. How the industry is, and some ways to think about business development in this strange time. So I think one of the startling observations I have is that work-wise, many of us are doing so much better than expected, better than we thought we ever could. Personally, though, it is a challenging time. I have 3 young adult kids, college kids, boy, they never thought they'd be living at home at this time in their life. And having worked for 18 or 20 years to get them ready to be out on their own, I never thought they'd be home either. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But we're doing well. So thanks for asking.
Oh, good. So from the marketing PR world, we know that over the last 5 years, it's changed dramatically. Just fewer magazines and different ways of sort of approaching and marketing yourselves. What do you think, or what are some of the initiatives of the firms you've worked with that they have taken action on that are unique or interesting that our audience may like to hear about?
That's you mean specifically now, or maybe just in general? You know,
Yeah, I guess leading up to this.
yeah. Well, it's you mentioned at the beginning that I had begun my career. Actually, I spent probably at this point maybe half my career in fashion accessories before crossing over into the world of high-end design, primarily residential design. And when I entered our field, it was already a time of great industry shifts and change. This is approximately um, the early 2000s, and that if I know you remember, Keith, and depending on ages of all of you out there, that was a time that the TV shows, the home improvement shows, were starting to come on, and there was a huge emphasis on DIY, and that you could change your home in a day, and you could do it yourself, and with a couple of throw pillows, you'd have a brand new life. And so when I entered this sector, it was really interesting because there was so much concern from the professional design and decorating community. What were these TV shows going to do? How are they going to erode the credibility and the professionalism of the trade? And so that led to a whole different movement where I think designers and decorators really had to say, here's my training, here's my background, here's my education. I'm not just about rickrack. I'm, about all these other disciplines. So that was the first change that I experienced, and now I don't. We never hear of the concern about DIY anymore. The TV shows, they're over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next huge change we all experienced was the recession, from 08, 09, 2010, 11. And what changes did that bring? That was really an interesting time because that brought the rise of the bloggers, really, and a
Mm-hmm.
whole different way to talk about our field. And so many bloggers happened because they didn't actually have the work. So they started talking about the work and writing about the work and using their own photography. And I think that was such an interesting time to think about right now because those individual designers put themselves out there. They created their own content and marketed themselves. And in fact, quite a few successful interior designers today began as bloggers in that period. So I sort of make that observation because here we are again at another inflection point. And from what I hear from my clients and our community at large, is the work is still there. The projects are not getting canceled, but it is such a good time to really think about what the purpose of your firm is, what your specialty is, what your strength is. So that may have been the longest answer on record, Keith, to get to the point of what are people doing right now that's innovative. That was your question to me, or what are my clients doing that's interesting? And it's going to sound like a non-answer, but many of them are actually honestly just thinking about their firm.
Mm-hmm.
What are, just going back to some of the really basic questions. What is the mission of the firm? What are the values of the firm? What are our strengths? What can we do? How do we make our money? These are the things that don't sound too innovative, but they're really what a number of the firms that I admire are doing right now.
Well, I know you'll remember this, talking about value, is when we were doing a conference in Copenhagen, and how every single member, when we broke them up, we had 225 people there, and when we broke them up into groups, they came back with the same answer. Remember what that was? Meg, do you remember what that was? You're muted.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself to avoid our thing. Yeah, I absolutely do. The answer was the value of design, the absolute necessity and urgency of communicating the true value of design.
Yeah, which I think now is how people are feeling is when you say they're wanting to talk about their firms and their business, but ultimately it's still about communicating value. So now with Corona and people, never realizing they'd ever be in a situation like this, what are you seeing in how people are sort of handling and promoting themselves?
Yeah, the extraordinary thing is, and I guess it's becoming sort of trite to say it, but no one saw this coming. Well, except those of you who've seen some of the fascinating TED Talks by Bill Gates and others. But on a dime, like literally from a Friday to a Monday, our lives changed. And what I've seen that many designers are doing, which I think is 100% the right thing to do, is communicating with empathy, with compassion, with concern, and using a more personal tone and more personal, I was going to say personal script, but that's a contradiction in terms, because actually it is unscripted now. So one of the most used and most important tools anyone has, of course, is social media, and specifically Instagram. And I bet we'll talk about Instagram a lot this meeting. But what I see in terms of the promotion is that the language is it's caring, and it's referencing referencing, but we're all this shared experience. And I think that is 100% the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing also is that just reaching out to past clients, just caring. I mean, making sure that people are okay, and it can stir up potential business, but it also creates loyalty and future, as people won't come out of this. I think we're going to be very strong because people want to fix up their homes or move to different locations or get away from crowds. I think that our industry actually will flourish after this.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, what's concerning you when you think about marketing in the coming years for our designers?
What a great question. I think what concerns me, well, see if I can articulate this concern. I think most of us, if not, well, actually almost anyone I've spoken to in our field, agrees with what you just said, which is that in the medium run and the long run, this pandemic, this tragic global event, is actually going to lift our sector, lift our field. And in fact, as I was going down memory lane talking about the early concerns about DIY, I think there's no better way to convince somebody that they cannot DIY than to put them in their house for 2 months. So I think that worry is long gone. There will indeed be a rush for professional services, I think. But anyway, almost in that enthusiasm and optimism about our sector could lie a potential problem if we get too cocky, or if we get too, just old-fashioned cocky, because we're still going to have to keep working for it. As I mentioned earlier, as a brand builder and business developer, I'm really a strategist, and that means, what is the purpose of your firm? What is your mission? What are you trying to accomplish? And can you communicate that convincingly, of course, but also just, crisply and with distinction from your competition? So one worry I have is almost an oxymoron, which is, let's not be so confident that we don't, that our sector is going to get all this attention, and that customers and clients and projects are going to grow on trees, because it still is going to take, some good
Yeah,
hard work.
it's a good point. So what kind of mistakes do you think that designers may be making right now when they think about marketing that you've seen?
Yeah, and I guess this observation of the mistake is another concern, to answer kind of both of your questions at the same time. One mistake I'm starting to see now, which I didn't see at the beginning of this pandemic era, is well, as my 18-year-old daughter would say, it's being extra.
Hmm.
And by that I mean coming on too strong. You know, this, even though we're all in this together, every single individual is having a unique experience because of family, because of friends, because of their, you know, where they may be sheltering in place, because of their nature of their firm. So a mistake I see is almost assuming that there is a universal experience right now, and that's where I think you said this a minute ago. It's really a great time, again, back to basics, to pause and ask, and then listen. So, you know, I'm seeing some designers, you know, have written clients, long letters, business letters that kind of presume X, Y, or Z, or even posting in their social media presume X, Y, or Z. So I would say it's a time to actually, you know, walk softly, and listen a lot.
Yeah. What about innovation? As far as, have you seen anything that it's like, wow, never thought that would happen, or what a great idea? Anything pop into your head about people marketing innovations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, they're happening all over. And I think that we don't have enough enough of a track record here to know what's really working. And that, I think, the next couple of months will show out, and probably some members of our audience today have a couple innovations that they're trying, and we'll see what, you're probably in a great position to hear what has worked. But some of the ones that I think are really nifty are, I've seen designers. I mean, obviously, everyone's taking to the airwaves, right? We've all gone. We're all now, movie stars in our own productions. But I think some of those innovations that are working really well and avoiding that extra concern I was mentioning are where the designer is, the spokesperson, the name on the door, the founder of the firm, is talking a little bit about their values or their inspiration, and not making a hard sell, but just sort of saying, hey, come on inside with me. Come on inside with me for a few minutes. I'm going to tell you about my work and my motivations. I also love the ones where designers are using IGTV or other video tools to showcase their team and talk about their their collaborations, whether it's tradespeople, artisans, promoting artisans, promoting some of the people who are not the name on the door. I think is one of the most compelling innovations I've seen. But the flip side to all that is the airwaves are very crowded now. I would say in probably the last 10 days even, the number of IGTVs and the cocktail parties and the this and the that and the so-and-so talking with so-and-so, that's where maybe that's a good example of what I was saying has become extra. It's just starting to feel like noise, and we need to be really careful to be more precise and crisper in what we're trying to communicate.
Yeah, I believe with all kinds of change that people take it this far and then they have to bring it back. We get overly enthusiastic about something, it turns out to be it's too much, like you said, and so the quality content sort of will rise to the top, and and people will start watching the right things that really bring them value. You did mention something that I wanted to touch base on, which was that hard sell, because you and I have had the same philosophy for years about, when we raise money for our conferences and our sponsors, and we believe in the soft sell, not the hard sell, because we have such a relationship-based business. And the more you can build that relationship, the less you have to sell, because they know who you are and they want to work with you. And so building on that, I think that soft sell, or how to send that soft sell message, is important. I know you agree.
Yeah, I could not agree more. There's sort of a formal marketing term called the considered set, which means a set of options, a group of options that anyone might consider when you're making a decision. So if you're deciding on washing, liquid, you might consider Whisk and Tide and X and Y and Z. So kind of applying that concept to our field, this is a fantastic time to remain, or either to remain or to put oneself in the considered set of homeowners. And to do that, that takes a soft sell. You can't, hammer somebody, hey, when you're ready to do that $1 million renovation, I'm the one. Better Call Saul sort of approach that does not work at our high end of the market. But you do want to get yourself into that considered set, and you want to stay there. And the best way to do that, as you referenced, is by relationship building. And so these are all kind of variations on a theme that we've been talking about. But it's just such a great time for designers to review client lists of everything from projects that that finished years ago or finished into the recent time. And as you already suggested, Keith, touch base. How are they doing? Don't try to sell them something. Just how are they doing? You were a part of their life, a very personal part of their life. Most likely, children or parents or friends. So it's a wonderful time to go back and touch, essentially reach out and touch someone, and do that with clients where projects have already been installed. You can do that with near misses, with business you didn't get. You can also just touch base and say, I was thinking of you. Social media is another wonderful way to do this. Really make sure that you're following all those people on your personal or your company Instagram, depending on which one you use. Make sure that you're really following all those clients, and engage, like what they're posting, see what they're posting, comment on it, or go to the direct message and start a dialogue. So it really is all about relationships, and that is the best thing that one could be doing right now, and it's sincere.
Yeah, totally agree. So what do you think? What's your opinion on the future of print media? Putting you on the spot.
I'm a paper person. I am a paper person. I'm a business person, but I'm probably just as tactile as your audience. I love textiles and touching and holding something. So I've never been able to wrap my mind around the fact that print is gone. But what I think is really interesting is the question behind that question, which is, what is the content that's on the printed page? What is the future of content on the printed page? Who is producing that content? Who's paying for that content? I don't have any expertise in publishing per se, but I am curious to know what the major media companies are doing, because subscription versus news, I believe they used to make a lot of money from newsstand, but I would imagine the newsstand distribution channel has gone away, and I imagine subscriptions have increased. So, that is one more way that this strange time, that there may be a business, a business sort of vector that's happening in print media, and we may see a rise of subscriptions, which may in turn, revive that sector. Thinking of magazines in particular, but the question that I was thinking about, in the question below your question, was, who's producing the content and who's paying for that content. Great example was several years ago. I think it was several years ago. Derek Caponegro and Schumacher started to produce their own magazine, the Bulletin. And it's a beautiful piece. And much like our other conversation about soft sell, it's clearly produced by them. They're not hiding that. Their prints and fabrics and textiles are mentioned in the vehicle, but there's also other things of interest to creative people. So, there's a case where, okay, in that middle period we were talking about, so many shelter magazines consolidated or reduced their numbers of issues. There was, great retraction in that sector. And yet we also see lifting a whole other form of print. Schumacher, Urban Electric, and others are now producing their own really beautiful print vehicles.
Actually, Philip Jeffrey announced their printed magazine they're starting. So you're right. People are being creative that way. I think we want to jump to questions from our audience, but I have one last question for you, and it's one that I often deal with, which is when times get tough, designers tend to take on work to feed the machine when it's the wrong work. And we saw a lot of that in 08 when people just needed work and they took on clients. And to this day, they call them the 08 clients or the 09 clients, because they're horrible in that, they expected more for less and they just were not moving their companies forward. Do you have advice for designers about really being selective, even when they need work, picking the right client?
I don't want this to sound too academic, but I think it really goes back to strategy. It goes back to some of the forces we've been chatting about today. Are you pre-pandemic? Did you like where your business was? Did it suit your talents, your unique skills, and were you making money? Did you have a pipeline of clients? Did you like your mission? Do you feel secure in your objectives? And if so, then stick to your knitting. And as you say, Keith, avoid the 08 peril, because that's going to throw you off your strategy, and it's going to be temporary. It's going to be confusing for your staff. Hey, wait, I thought we were here. Why are we doing this? It's going to be potentially confusing for, again, your considered set of homeowners. Wait a second, I heard you did a front hall closet. Why are you now telling me you're a whole house resource? So it is confusing. But I'd add something special to that advice right now in May of 2020, which is if pre-pandemic, if going into 2020, you weren't so sure that you had the right model, you weren't sure you were really deploying your talents in the best possible way. If your margins weren't where they should be, if your profitability wasn't where it should be, given your level of expertise and investment of time, then this is kind of a neat time to maybe experiment, because this is a time of innovation. And if it might be a time to try one or two things that are outside of where you were working pre-March 1, because why not? But my advice would be, do it deliberately, do it strategically, do it with thoughtfulness, do it with an intention. Know why you're going to try XYZ. Don't just snap at the work, but say, hey, this is something I've been thinking about for some time. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this one-off opportunity to see what I can learn and see if maybe it's a way to innovate for my firm for the balance of 2020 and beyond.
Great advice. So Sarah, do we have questions out there?
Yeah, we do. Before our questions, though, we have a few comments. Our first comment is from Jeffrey. Meg, I agree with you in what you said about interior designers that became bloggers in the mid-2000s. I was one of them. And another comment from Rami. I think that there will be an increased level of authenticity and programming within the design industry. Timeless, good design will be more important than ever, and trends may be set aside for more tried and true materials and furnishings. I think that educating our clients on where to spend their money, really spend the money, will be more meaningful. So those are a couple of comments that came in.
Those are great.
Those are great.
And our first question is from Lisa for Meg. You said one of the most important tools is social media. Can you share your thoughts on how social media influencers have become a major force in marketing, especially in the trade? What advice do you have for brands who have never worked with influencers before who want to start now?
That's very interesting. The question is about influencers, and that's actually not my bag. I come at business development really as a field or as a concept from the place of the founder, the ideator, the originator, because ultimately nobody can sell your services better than you. And I'm saying you, presuming many of you are your own founders, but the you can also be anybody on your staff, as long as they literally understand the mission, embrace the mission, and know how to represent it through what I call different touch points, which is a whole other conversation. So the question about influencers is I don't know if I can really answer that. What I would say instead is the voice of your social media really has to be authentic. Back when I was chatting about extra, I think we all have a pretty sophisticated BS meter these days, right? And you can sense when a caption or a photo is I don't know if I want to say too slick, maybe that's the wrong word, but too slick, or if the voice changes. So with an account you're following and the voice has been one way and then it changes, or the comments don't track with the caption. These are things that people like me actually analyze, but the rest of the world doesn't analyze it. You don't have to, you just react. You're like, hey, there's something that's not legit here. So I'm not in favor, at least at the sector of very high-end design, of particularly of paid influencers. I'm really in favor of the brand owner, whether it's a firm owner or you mentioned, a vendor over to the trade. Own it yourself. And the numbers don't matter that much anymore. I mean, there are crazy numbers out there, hundreds of thousands of followers. But when you're operating where we're all operating, we're in a much more finite segment, and that's where the authenticity and the engagement matter a whole lot more than the sheer number count. Hope that answers it.
Yeah, I would add to that clients of mine who have had people handle their social media, and I immediately can tell it's not their voice, and it sort of turns you off, because you're hearing something that you know is not authentic, and it's like, where is that coming from? I would never think that you would say those words or present that picture as an image. And maybe many people don't know that because they don't know you, but how are they going to get to know you if somebody else is your voice, if they really don't know how to articulate themselves? Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, another question comes in from Fawn, and she asks, are there any paid advertisements or marketing that you recommend?
Great question. Something kind of a little bit of an off the radar, or for some, well, no, I don't know if it's off the radar. Yes, let me answer the question directly. Yes, I am in favor of regional advertising, and regional advertising got kind of a bad rap, sort of back in maybe that first era or middle era I was talking about at the beginning of this session, as being déclassé or not sophisticated enough. But regional advertising is a really neat way to target a very specific geography, and you can use it either for where your I was going to say your office is, but who knows where that is. But you can use regional advertising effectively if it's an area that you're doing some business in and you want more business, or if it's a target. You can purchase regional advertising. It can be quite cost effective, and just put yourself in that market using the tool of local home and design meeting. So that's one way. Another type of paid advertising that I don't personally know that much about, but I think is very intriguing, particularly now that our entire lives have moved online, is digital paid advertising. And I have seen a number of designers start to use this tool. It also can become extra. So I would concentrate less on number of insertions, which is that frequency, because that, as we all know in our personal lives, that gets annoying. But I think digital advertising would be something to really look into right now. And as I say, I'm not an expert in it, but I think that really might be worth investment of time to research it, and then investment of money.
Great.
Right. Another question comes in from Jeffrey and asks, I wonder how many designers will start working from home and get rid of their commercial office space? Any predictions on this?
Wow, I don't know if we have a polling function on this webinar, but we could probably poll all of you and probably find 50-50. I don't know if you all saw, but I can't think of the name. The CEO of Twitter said that basically the hell with the office. Work from wherever you want to work. And I think in our world, we probably are going to be split. That would be my prediction. I have one very prominent client with whom we've decided that they are going to work, not even think about returning to the office, at least till the fall. I think there are other clients I've chatted with, designers I've chatted with, who are just itching to get back in there because that's where their libraries are. Although many of us have home design libraries as well, but that's where their real library is, which is such an important reference, and where the full array of samples and swatches are. So, gosh, I guess I have to say 50-50. However, I'll answer I'll add a coda, which is really a practical one. Leases are very expensive. I've been tripped up at several times in my career with both office leases and retail leases. So not unlike my response to Keith's question of don't take on work that you don't want, that maybe there's an experiment. If you have a very expensive lease, I think that might be something that would be a very logical piece of your financial planning to see what you could shift and adjust.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that as well, because I've been talking to a lot of my clients about, what they're going to do about sort of moving back in and it's also been mixed. I had one client say that their entire staff doesn't want to go back into New York City. They don't want to commute on the subways, and they don't want to go back to the office. And so we were even talking about, you could probably lease a couple of cars for the cost of rent and have a space in the suburbs but at the end of the day, I think as designers, creativity happens a lot in person and impromptu. And whether it's rolling up to somebody's desk and seeing what they're working on, it's being in a meeting and an idea pops into someone's head. I don't think we get 100% of that creativity remotely. And I think the interaction of human contact in an office space is still important. So I think there's going to be a hybrid, maybe, is the answer, versus some doing it and some not doing it. I think we'll find a different solution. It'll certainly lighten up traffic all over the world, which was always necessary, because people who have to commute an hour or two to work, I don't know how sustainable that was either. So I do think we'll see some kind of hybrid.
Right, thank you guys. So about two more questions, and then we'll end the webinar here. A question from Erica, and she asks, what are your thoughts about in-person events like LCDQ and High Point? Do you think they will come back in 2020 or 2021?
Well, that is a question very near and dear to my heart. And if any of you out there know me in real life, you know that a strategy I deployed, actually sort of conceived and then deployed in that strange middle period I was talking about before the recession, 08, 09, 2010, when I was business partners with Rose Tarlow, was in-person events. Much like Keith and I have been chatting, it's a fantastic soft sell way to engage with people on mutual areas of interest and content. It's fun. Networking can happen in a very authentic and genuine way, and it's gone. So how do I feel? I'm personally distraught, and but I have to take the innovation challenge myself and say, what else can we do? How can we achieve those goals of authentic content and even authentic networking without in-person events? So do I think they'll come back in 2020? This is kind of gloomy to end on this note, but I really don't think so. I think there will be events of perhaps 15 or 20, 15, 20, 25 people, which will be very effective. But we really have to change our mental model and think, how can we operate in these smaller groups rather than the larger groups. LCDQ breaks my heart. I was on the board of that crew originally, and but right now I don't think there's appetite for that. So will it come back in 2021? Yes, I think it will, but with different types of procedures and protocols.
I was on the phone with somebody recently, and we were talking about that it probably be exactly what you said, Meg, which is small groups of 15. And the expression we use is, you're going to find your tribe. And, those are those smaller groups of people you trust and know where they've been and, know how responsible they are. Those are the people you're going to want to be around. And so it's going to be tribal. So Sarah, one
All
more
right.
question.
Yeah, we have one more question from Michelle. Like Meg said, we are using the time to reflect on our business strategy and realize that we have put little effort into marketing. What is your advice on how to hire a marketing team member or consultant?
In this context, in this time, my first piece of advice sounds like you're already doing, which is to define what your firm is all about, what your strengths are, and where you want to go. So kind of get those things in mind. And then probably jot down a range of questions. Even some of the ones we've been talking about today, what's the role of digital advertising? Kind of create some questions that you honestly don't know. And then start your interview process by making sure that the person you're seeking to engage can help you with those specific questions. Or the other thing I threw out, to the paid media question, regional, paid media, seek to find people who have the very specific expertise that you think you need. That would be a good way to invest your money right now. And then how do you find them? How do you find us? Almost like anything, word of mouth, right? Word of mouth. Ask your colleagues, ask people who are in trade associations with you. Look at other designers and see who's kind of public face you think you like, and then just ask them. Are you working with somebody? How is that going? Tell me about it. So word of mouth. Do some desk research in terms of finding the people you admire their public persona and see if they have some help behind the scenes. And then there are directories. Business of Home has a very good directory. That directory comes to mind. And just ask around. But go into the interviewing process with a sense of where you want to go, because otherwise you're going to be talked into something that may not fit what you want.
Great advice. Meg, thank you. This is fun, and and we never get to do this with each other, so it's really great, and I'm sure our audience really appreciates all of your advice. If they want to reach out to you, we can make that possible.
Sure.
And you just ask more questions or whatever they need, and see you soon.
See you soon. Great. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much.
Great. So Sarah, we have next week, we have Chad Stark, of Stark Carpet, and we're really excited about Chad and the information he's going to tell us about how they've been handling this pandemic and their company. So
absolutely. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Meg. So as Keith mentioned, our guest next week will be Chad Stark, and that's on May 20th. Senior VP of Stark Carpets and President of Scalamandre. Please join us, and you can register from your Studio Designer dashboards. Any questions or feedback, please email hello@studiodesigner.com. Thank you for being a part of our Studio Designer community.